He called me simple in German, a clueless American swept off her feet. But he never suspected my secret fluency in the language would expose his dark plan to replace me entirely. The lie was small at first, a playful little secret I kept just for myself. When my husband, Lars, and I first moved to this picturesque little town in the heart of Germany's Black Forest, I let him believe I was completely helpless. I'd studied German for 8 years, spending a year abroad in college and practically dreaming in Deutsch, but Lars didn't know that. He only knew the whirlwind romance, the charming American girl who was swept off her feet. To him, my German was limited to Danke schön and a clumsy Sprechen Sie English. He loved it. He thrived on being my interpreter, my guide, my sole connection to the world around us. In restaurants, he'd lean in close, the scent of his cologne filling my senses, and murmur, "Tell me what you want, mein Spätzchen, my little sparrow, and I will tell them." He'd order for me with a flourish, his German confident and crisp, and I'd watch, smiling demurely, playing the part of the adoring, dependent wife. It was a game, and for a while it was fun. It seemed to make him happy, to puff up his chest and make him feel like the man of the house, the protector. I told myself it was a harmless indulgence, a way to soothe his ego, which I was beginning to learn was more fragile than it appeared. Our life was supposed to be a fairy tale. We used my inheritance, a significant sum left by my grandmother, to buy a half-timbered house on the edge of the woods that needed renovation. It was my money, but Lars handled everything. The bank accounts, the contractors, the permits. "You don't need to worry your pretty little head about these things," he'd say, kissing my forehead. "It's all so complicated with the language barrier. Let me take care of us." And I let him. I floated through my days in a bubble of feigned ignorance, smiling and nodding at the bakers, the mailmen, and the construction workers, allowing Lars to be my voice. The first crack in the fairy tale appeared on a Tuesday. The air was cool and smelled of pine and damp earth. Lars wanted to buy an antique cuckoo clock, a truly authentic piece for our new home. He led me into a small, dusty shop on the main cobblestone street, the kind of place where time seems to have stopped. A little bell tinkled above the door as we entered. The shop was cluttered but charming, filled with old furniture, porcelain figurines, and the quiet, rhythmic ticking of dozens of clocks. An old man sat behind the counter, but it was a young woman who approached us. She was maybe in her early 20s, with blonde hair tied back in a loose braid and bright, inquisitive blue eyes. "Guten Tag," she said, her smile warm. "Guten Tag," Lars boomed back, his voice full of charm. He placed a possessive hand on the small of my back and turned to me. "She said hello, darling." I gave him a brilliant, clueless smile. "Oh, hello," I chirped at the girl, giving a little wave. The shop assistant, whose name tag read Anya, giggled politely. Lars then launched into an elaborate explanation in German about his search for the perfect clock. He was animated, using his hands, his voice rising and falling with theatrical passion. I wandered away from them, pretending to be captivated by a case of delicate silver lockets. I could still hear them clearly. The shop was small, and the acoustics carried every whispered word. I ran a finger over the cool glass, my reflection staring back at me, my smile looking brittle and strange. Lars was laying the charm on thick. He was telling Anya about our romantic new life in Germany, how he'd whisked his American wife away from the hustle and bustle. Anya was eating it up, laughing at all the right moments. I felt a familiar, dull ache. It was the ache of being talked about as if I weren't there, of being an accessory to his story rather than a character in my own. "Your wife is very quiet," Anya observed in German, her tone light and curious. "Is she enjoying Germany?" I held my breath, my fingers frozen on the glass case. I expected Lars to say something sweet, something like, "She loves it. She's just shy because of the language." Instead, he let out a low, conspiratorial chuckle. "She's simple," he said. The German word he chose was einfach. It wasn't a compliment. It meant simple, plain, uncomplicated. He made it sound like I was a golden retriever, lovable but not much going on upstairs. She doesn't really understand much of what's happening around her, but she's happy as long as she has a nice view and something pretty to look at. It's better this way, you know? Less complicated. The air in my lungs turned to ice. Simple. He thought I was simple. The game, the little lie, suddenly felt sordid and suffocating. Every loving gesture, every protective statement, every time he took care of things, replayed in my mind, now tainted with this ugly new truth. He didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as a pet. Anya's response was a soft, sympathetic sh. So, it's why I have to handle all the finances, the house? Lars continued, his voice dropping even lower, as if sharing a great burden. With her inheritance, we're finally able to get the house of my dreams. She has no idea how much things cost or the paperwork involved. I just tell her where to sign. A wave of nausea rolled over me. My inheritance. My grandmother's legacy. The money that was supposed to be our fresh start. Anya leaned forward slightly, her expression now a mixture of pity and admiration for the man supposedly handling so much. She must be so excited about the big house, though. It's wonderful that you can give her such a beautiful home. I watched their reflections in the glass. I saw Lars shake his head, a small, smug smile playing on his lips. He looked around the shop, as if to make sure I was still distracted by the shiny things, then leaned closer to Anya, his voice a barely audible whisper that cut through the ticking of the clocks like a razor blade. "Oh, the house," he murmured, his tone slick with a secret amusement I had never heard before. "She has no idea about the house. The house isn't for her. Once her signature is on the final transfer papers, she won't be needing a house here at all." The ticking of the clocks in the shop swelled into a deafening roar, a frantic countdown to a disaster I couldn't see. My blood ran cold, turning to slush in my veins. She won't be needing a house here at all. The words echoed in the hollow space that had just opened up inside my chest. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about him thinking I was simple. This was something darker, something predatory. He was getting rid of me. My reflection in the glass was a stranger. A pale, wide-eyed woman whose mask of placid ignorance was about to shatter. I had to hold it together. I took a shaky, silent breath and forced my muscles to relax. I turned from the lockets, pasting a bright, curious smile on my face as I walked back toward them. My legs felt like they were moving through deep water. "Find anything you like. Main Spatchen?" Lars asked, turning to me, his arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me against his side. The gesture, which once felt protective, now felt like a cage. His smile was so warm, so genuine, it was monstrous. I looked at Anya, whose face was a mask of polite sympathy for the poor, simple American wife. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her the man she was admiring was a viper. Instead, I pointed a trembling finger towards a large, ornate cuckoo clock on the wall behind her. "That one is pretty," I said, my voice sounding thin and childish even to my own ears. Lars beamed. "Excellent choice, my love. You have such wonderful taste." He turned to Anya and switched back to fluent German. "She likes the big one. Of course. Her eyes are always bigger than her wallet." He chuckled, and Anya joined in, a little tinkle of a laugh that made my stomach churn. "We'll take it. Can you arrange for delivery?" The rest of the transaction was a blur. I stood there, a decorative object in my husband's life, nodding and smiling when he occasionally translated a simplified, patronizing version of the conversation for me. "He's just confirming our address, darling. She says it will be delivered on Friday. Isn't that wonderful?" Each word was a lie, a layer of cotton wool he was wrapping around me to muffle the truth. As we left the shop, the little bell tinkling our departure, Lars squeezed my hand. "That will look perfect in our forever home, won't it? Forever home." The phrase was a threat. The walk back to the house was the longest of my life. The charming cobblestone streets felt treacherous. The fairy tale-like houses seemed to leer at me with their dark, timbered frames. Lars chattered on about the clock, about the renovations, about a dinner he wanted to have with some new business associates. I was a ghost floating beside him, my mind racing. The final transfer papers. What were they? I had signed so many documents, guided by his hand, his finger pointing to the line. It's just for the utility company, shots. This is for the building permit, labeling. Had I already signed my life away? No, he said, final. There was still something left. I had to find it. I had to know what I was up against. When we got back to the house, the sound of saws and hammers filled the air. The renovation was in full swing. I'm going to check on the crew's progress, Lars announced, kissing my cheek. And I have a quick meeting with the contractor in town. I'll be back in a few hours. Why don't you rest? You look a little pale. His concern was chilling. I watched him walk away, his confident stride making my skin crawl. The moment his car disappeared down the long, wooded driveway, I sprang into action. The house was a mess of dust sheets and tools, but I knew where to go. His office, the one room he had declared off-limits. The door always locked. Too much sensitive financial paperwork, darling. I wouldn't want you to worry. The lock was old. My grandmother, who had left me the money that was funding my own demise, had also taught me a few things. She'd been a mischievous woman who believed every girl should know how to pick a lock and throw a punch. I found a hairpin in my purse and a paperclip on a dusty side table. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely fit the pin into the keyhole. The clicks of the tumblers were impossibly loud over the pounding of my own heart. After what felt like an eternity, I heard the final, satisfying click-dash. The knob turned. I was in. His office was meticulously organized, a stark contrast to the chaos in the rest of the house. A large oak desk dominated the room, with neat stacks of files and a sleek, modern laptop. I didn't have much time. I started with the filing cabinet, my fingers flying through the tabs. Utilities, insurance, permits. It was all there exactly as he'd said. Then I saw a folder labeled with our last name, and underneath, in smaller print, Vermogensübertragung, asset transfer. My breath hitched. I pulled it out. Inside was a thick stack of legal documents, dense with German terminology that would have been impenetrable to me just a few hours ago. Now I scanned it with desperate clarity. It was a power of attorney agreement, an incredibly broad one, giving him complete control over all my assets, both in Germany and the US, upon the final sale of my grandmother's property back in the States. The sale was due to close next week. That must be it. The final signature. But there was another folder underneath it, a thinner one labeled simply Project House. I thought it would be blueprints, the ones we'd looked at together for hours, dreaming of a cozy library and a big country kitchen. I opened it, and my blood ran even colder. These were different blueprints. The cozy library was gone, replaced by a gym and a sauna. The country kitchen was a minimalist chrome and steel affair. This wasn't our dream house. This was his. A sleek, sterile bachelor pad. Then I saw the bank statements tucked in the back. Withdrawal after withdrawal from my inheritance account. Tens of thousands of euros transferred to accounts I didn't recognize, payments for things I couldn't identify. He was bleeding me dry. My eyes scanned the architect's notes scrawled in the margins of the new master bedroom plan. My gaze snagged on one sentence, circled in red ink. It was a confirmation of a specific, peculiar request Lars had made. A request that had nothing to do with aesthetics or design. A request that made the hair on my arms stand on end. It read, per your instructions, the additional soundproofing for the master suite and the adjoining cellar has been quoted separately. As you specified, it will ensure complete acoustic isolation. Complete acoustic isolation. The words seemed to vibrate in the silent room, sinister and final. A soundproofed cellar. Why would anyone need a soundproofed cellar in a romantic Black Forest getaway? My mind, already reeling from the financial betrayal, plunged into a much darker place. The quaint fairy tale I thought I was living in curdled into a Grimm's horror story. I imagined myself locked in that silent, isolated darkness, my screams absorbed by the thick, expensive insulation, my existence erased. He wasn't just planning to leave me. He was planning to make me disappear. Panic clawed at my throat, hot and sharp. I wanted to run, to grab my passport and flee to the nearest airport. But where would I go? He had control of my money. He had my trust, my signature on a dozen documents I didn't understand. If I ran now, he'd just paint me as the hysterical, unstable American wife who couldn't handle the move. He'd use my simplicity, the very trait he'd bragged about, against me. I would be a Jane Doe in a foreign country, a footnote in his meticulously planned new life. No, couldn't run. Not yet. I had to be smarter than him. I had to play his game, but by my own rules. I took a picture of the blueprints, the bank statements, and the power of attorney with my phone, my hands trembling so hard the first few shots were blurry. I saved them to a secure cloud drive he didn't know about, then deleted them from my phone's gallery. I put the folders back exactly as I had found them, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I locked the office door, slid the hairpin back into my hair, and walked out into the dusty chaos of the hallway just as I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. He was back. I schooled my features into a look of calm repose, picking up a design magazine from a side table and sinking into an armchair as he walked in. The dust sheet tickled my nose. "Hello, my love," he said, striding over and kissing the top of my head. "The contractor is a fool, but what can you do?" He sounded so normal, so much like the man I thought I had married. It was sickening. "Is everything okay with the house?" I asked, forcing my voice to sound light and unconcerned. The perfect simpleton. "Nothing for you to worry about," he said, patting my shoulder. "Just boring technical details. Did you have a nice rest?" I murmured, flipping a page of the magazine. My eyes weren't seeing the glossy pictures of minimalist living rooms. They were seeing the words, "complete acoustic isolation." The next few days were a masterclass in deception. I was the most attentive, adoring, and blissfully ignorant wife imaginable. I hung on his every word, brought him coffee while he worked in his locked office, and praised his genius in handling all the complicated German stuff. I watched him, every move he made, every phone call he took. I'd sit on the patio, pretending to read a novel, but I was listening. With my fluent German, his guarded conversations with the contractor, the banker, and someone named Sergei became crystal clear. He was liquidating my American assets faster than I thought possible. The final paperwork he needed my signature on was for the sale of my grandmother's house. That was the final key that would unlock everything for him. He told me it was just a formality to transfer the title into a German trust for tax purposes. He planned to have me sign it on Friday, the same day the cuckoo clock was set to be delivered. On Thursday evening, he was in a fantastic mood. He'd made dinner, a surprisingly good schnitzel, and opened a bottle of expensive Riesling. "A celebration," he announced, raising his glass. "To our new beginning." My smile felt like a shard of glass in my mouth. "What are we celebrating?" "The house is progressing beautifully," he said, his eyes gleaming in the candlelight. "And tomorrow we sign the last of the boring papers for your grandmother's estate. Then, everything is truly ours. No more looking back." I raised my glass, my hand steady despite the tremor I felt deep in my core. "To us?" I said, my voice sweet as honey. After dinner, he went to his office to take a call. I heard his voice, low and urgent, drifting from under the door. He was speaking German, of course.
Ja, Sergei, alles ist nach Plan.
"Everything is on schedule. She'll sign tomorrow afternoon." "No complications." "She suspects nothing."
Sie ist so naiv.
"She is so naive. It's almost sad." I stood in the darkened hallway, the wine turning to acid in my stomach. Naive. He had no idea. I crept back to the kitchen and waited. When he finally emerged, he was smiling, relaxed. "Just tying up some loose ends," he said breezily. "I think I'll turn in early. Big day tomorrow." He kissed me, a dry, passionless peck on the lips, and headed upstairs. I waited until I heard the shower running, then slipped into his office, which he'd forgotten to lock in his celebratory haze. His laptop was open on the desk. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was a huge risk, but I had to know. Who was Sergei? His email was still open. The most recent thread was with a man named Sergei Volkov. I clicked on it. The messages were short, cryptic, mostly about money transfers and logistics. But it was the attachments that made my blood freeze. They were scans of travel documents. A one-way flight ticket to Chisinau, Moldova, for this coming Sunday. It was in Lars's name, and beside it, another document. It was a new German passport application. The photo was of a smiling, blonde woman with bright blue eyes. It was Anya, the shop assistant from the cuckoo clock store. The name on the passport, however, was not Anya. It was mine, Sarah Wagner. My name. My face was supposed to be replaced by hers. Anya, the wide-eyed, sympathetic girl from the clock shop. It was a classic, brutal plot, stripped from the pages of a noir thriller. He wasn't just planning to lock me in a cellar. He was planning to replace me entirely. Anya would become Sarah Wagner, the wealthy American heiress, living in my house, spending my money, while I would simply cease to exist. The soundproofed cellar wasn't for imprisonment. It was for disposal. It was a place where a body could lie undiscovered for a very, very long time. A cold, methodical calm washed over me, displacing the panic. The fear was still there, a block of ice in my gut, but it was now overlaid with a diamond-hard layer of rage. He had underestimated me. He had looked at me and seen a simple, pretty doll he could manipulate and discard. He had never once suspected that the doll could hear, understand, and think for herself. That was his mistake, and it was going to be his downfall. I closed the laptop, my movements precise and silent. I went back to the kitchen and made myself a cup of chamomile tea, my hands perfectly steady. The naive, helpless wife was gone. In her place was my grandmother's granddaughter, a woman who knew how to pick locks, and who was about to learn just how hard she could punch. I had less than 24 hours. The next morning, I woke up before Lars. I made coffee, humming a cheerful tune as I moved around the kitchen. When he came downstairs, dressed in an expensive suit for his important meeting with the notary, I greeted him with a kiss and a plate of fresh croissants. "You're in a good mood, Main Spatchen," he said, smiling down at me. "Of course. It's our big day," I chirped. "The last of the paperwork. Then we can finally relax." I even feigned a little shiver of excitement. "I can't wait to start decorating," he chuckled, ruffling my hair. "That's my girl. Focused on the important things." He told me the notary appointment was at 2 o'clock. He would pick me up at 1:30. That gave me a few hours. After he left, his briefcase full of documents that would seal my fate, I started my own preparations. I packed a small, discreet go-bag, passport, some cash I had stashed away, a burner phone I'd bought weeks ago on a shopping trip for myself, and a change of clothes. I hid it in the old woodshed behind the house. Then I made a few phone calls. The first was to the notary's office. Speaking in flawless, formal German, I identified myself as Sarah Wagner's personal assistant, calling from the U.S. "Frau Wagner's plans have changed slightly," I said, my voice crisp and professional. "She's decided to fly in her own legal counsel to oversee the signing. He's an American lawyer, Mr. Davison, and he doesn't speak German. Would it be possible to arrange for a certified translator to be present at the 2 o'clock appointment?" The receptionist was flustered but accommodating. "Of course," she said. "We can arrange that." "Excellent," I replied. "Mr. Wagner is unaware of this change. Frau Wagner wishes for it to be a surprise. Please just ensure the translator is there when they arrive." My second call was more difficult. It was to the local Polizeipresidium. I couldn't just walk in and claim my husband was trying to murder me. They'd think I was a hysterical foreigner. I needed to give them something concrete, something they couldn't ignore. Again, I used my fluent German. I told the officer who answered that I had information about suspected financial crimes and potential fraud being committed by a German citizen, Lars Wagner, against his American wife. I mentioned large, suspicious international money transfers and potential document forgery. I gave them the name Sergei Volkov. That got their attention. I told them I had evidence, but that it was too dangerous for me to come in. I said that Lars Wagner and his wife would be at the notary's office of Dr. Schmidt on Friedrichstrasse at 2 o'clock sharp, to sign a final asset transfer. I believe he intends to coerce her signature, I said, letting a note of urgency creep into my voice. You may want to have someone nearby. I hung up before they could ask too many questions. It was a gamble, but it was the only one I had. At 1:30, Lars pulled up, looking pleased with himself. He helped me into the car, his hand lingering a little too long on my back. Ready, my love? After this, all our dreams come true. I can't wait, I said, my smile unwavering. The drive into town was surreal. He pointed out a little cafe he thought we should try, talked about the new car he wanted to buy. He was a man without a care in the world, already living in his future, a future that didn't include me. We arrived at the notary's office, a stately old building with a heavy oak door. My heart was a trapped bird, beating against my ribs. Had my plan worked? Would anyone be here? We walked into the quiet, wood-paneled waiting room. An older man with a kind face and a briefcase stood up. Mr. Wagner? He asked in English.
I'm Robert Davison.
I'm Mrs. Wagner's attorney.
Lars Froos.
He stared at the man, then at me. His charming smile faltered, confusion clouding his eyes. Your attorney? What is this, Sarah? I gave him my most brilliant, clueless smile. It's a surprise. With all this important money stuff, I thought it would be a good idea to have a professional look things over. You're always saying how I don't understand these things, so I found someone who does. I had hired Mr. Davison online 2 days ago from a firm specializing in expat legal aid. He was a retired American lawyer living in Stuttgart. I'd paid him handsomely for a few hours of his time, instructing him to simply be present, look imposing, and question everything. Lars's composure cracked for a second. A muscle in his jaw twitched. That's very thoughtful, darling, but completely unnecessary. Nonsense, I chirped. Come on, let's go in. We were led into a conference room where the notary, Dr. Schmidt, was waiting, along with another woman. Herr Wagner, Frau Wagner, the notary said in German. And this is Frau Meller, a certified translator, as requested. Lars's face went pale. He shot me a look of pure fury, but I just widened my eyes innocently, as if to say, a translator? How thoughtful of them. The meeting began. Dr. Schmidt started explaining the documents in German, with Frau Muller translating into English. Mr. Davison, my hired gun, listened intently, occasionally stopping the proceedings to ask a sharp question. Could you clarify Clause 3, subsection B regarding the liquidation of U.S.-based assets? What are the tax implications of this transfer for a non-EU citizen? Lars was sweating. His confident explanations were faltering under the direct, professional scrutiny. He kept trying to gloss over the details, saying, "It's just a standard procedure." But Davison and the notary were having none of it. They were going through the power of attorney document line by line, the very one I'd photographed. The trap was closing. Then, just as the notary turned to the final signature page, my phone rang. I had set a specific alarm. "Oh, goodness!" I exclaimed, looking at the screen. "It's the delivery service." I answered, putting the burner phone to my ear and launching into a pre-rehearsed conversation in rapid-fire, panicked English. "What? The new clock? It fell? Oh no. Is it broken? The entire front is smashed?" "Lars, darling," I said, turning to him with wide, tearful eyes, my voice trembling. "The cuckoo clock is broken. The delivery men dropped it on the driveway." Lars stared at me, his face a thunderous mask of rage. The clock was the least of his concerns right now. "Sarah, we are in the middle of something," he hissed in English. "But it's ruined. The beautiful clock you bought for our forever home." I wailed, putting on the performance of a lifetime. I could see the notary and the lawyers exchanging uncomfortable glances. My calculated, childish outburst had thrown a wrench into the serious, legal proceedings. It was the perfect cover. I continued my phone call. "What? It's not just the clock? You hit something else? The gas line? You smell gas? You need to evacuate the house immediately." I gasped, my eyes flying to Lars's.
Lars.
"The house. There's a gas leak. The delivery truck hit the main line. We have to go. Now. The conference room, a moment before a stage for dry legal theater, erupted into chaos. A gas leak? The notary, Dr. Schmidt, exclaimed in German, rising from his chair. My hired attorney, Mr. Davison, looked at me with a mixture of alarm and professional concern. Frau Muller, the translator, simply looked stunned. But all my attention was on Lars. For a split second, his mask of the suave, concerned husband slipped entirely, revealing the cold, calculating predator beneath. I saw it in his eyes, a flash of pure, undiluted fury. Not concern for our home, not worry for our safety, but rage. Rage that his meticulously planned, multi-million-dollar heist was being derailed by a broken cuckoo clock and a clumsy delivery driver. He was trapped. He couldn't dismiss a potential gas leak, not in front of these legal professionals. It would look monstrously callous. We have to go, I insisted, my voice thick with manufactured panic. I grabbed his arm, pulling him towards the door. Our house could explode. Calm down, Sarah. He snarled through clenched teeth, his grip on my arm painfully tight. He forced a smile for the room. My wife, she gets emotional. I'm sure it's nothing. Please, excuse us for one moment. He dragged me out of the conference room and into the hallway, his fingers digging into my bicep like claws. The moment the door closed behind us, his facade dissolved. What is the meaning of this? He hissed, his face inches from mine, his voice a low, venomous whisper. An attorney? This ridiculous scene? Do you have any idea what you've done? I met his gaze, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I let my own mask fall away. The wide-eyed, simple girl vanished. He was no longer looking at his Spatchen, his little sparrow. He was looking at a stranger. I know everything, Lars, I said, my voice steady and cold. I spoke in perfect, colloquial German.
Ich weiß alles.
The color drained from his face. He stared at me, his mouth slightly agape, the confident swagger gone, replaced by a dawning, horrified comprehension. It was as if the ground beneath his feet had turned to smoke. I know about Anya, I continued, my German words precise and cutting. I know about the passport she applied for in my name. I know about your one-way ticket to Moldova. I know about the soundproof cellar you were building to dispose of my body after you emptied my bank accounts. He recoiled as if I had physically struck him. He looked utterly bewildered, like a magician whose grand illusion has just been exposed as a cheap trick. You speak German? He stammered, the question absurd in its inadequacy. 8 years, I said with a thin, merciless smile. I'm not as einfach as you thought, am I? The hallway door at the far end of the corridor opened. 2 uniformed police officers stepped through, followed by a plainclothes detective. They had gotten my message. My gamble had paid off. They walked towards us with a calm, deliberate purpose. Lars's eyes darted from me to the approaching officers and back again. The last vestiges of his composure shattered. He was cornered. You bitch, he breathed, a look of pure hatred contorting his handsome features. You scheming American bitch. He made a move, a desperate lunge not towards the exit, but towards me. I think he meant to grab me, to use me as a shield or a hostage. But he forgot one thing. He had spent months seeing me as a fragile doll. He never considered that my grandmother, along with teaching me about lockpicking, had also insisted I take 2 years of Krav Maga. As his hands reached for me, my reaction was instinctive. I pivoted, using his momentum against him. I brought my elbow up hard under his chin. His head snapped back with a sickening crackle, and his eyes rolled up. He staggered backward, stumbling directly into the arms of the waiting police officers, who expertly subdued him and slammed the cuffs on his wrists. It was all over in a matter of seconds. The detective, a stern-looking woman with sharp eyes, approached me. Frau Wagner, she asked in German. Ja, I replied, my voice shaking slightly now that the adrenaline was beginning to fade. Thank you for coming. We intercepted a call between him and a man named Sergei Volkov an hour ago, she said, nodding towards the pathetic, sputtering figure of my husband. Something about a forged passport and a flight being moved up. Your tip was a good one. She looked me up and down, a flicker of professional respect in her eyes. You seem to be more resourceful than he gave you credit for. The aftermath was a whirlwind of legal proceedings. My testimony, combined with the evidence from Lars's laptop, the blueprints for the soundproof cellar, the fraudulent passport application from a now terrified Anya who quickly turned state's witness, and the recorded calls with Sergei, built an ironclad case. Lars was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, aggravated fraud, and forgery, among other things. He would not be seeing the outside of a German prison for a very, very long time. It took months to untangle the financial mess he had made, but with Mr. Davison's help, I was able to freeze the accounts and recover most of my inheritance. I sold the half-renovated house, that monument to his greed and my naivety, without ever setting foot in it again. I didn't go back to America right away. I stayed in Germany, not in that small town, but in Berlin, a city teeming with life and art and history. I got a small apartment, enrolled in a master's program, and for the first time I lived for myself. I spoke German every day, not as a secret weapon, but simply as a way to order coffee, to debate politics with my classmates, to tell a joke. It was my voice, and I would never let anyone take it from me again. Sometimes, when I'm sitting at a cafe, I think about that dusty little clock shop. I think about the moment the fairy tale shattered and I was forced to see the monster hiding in plain sight. It was a brutal, terrifying awakening. But in a way, Lars was right about one thing. It was a new beginning, not for us, but for me. He thought he was taking everything from me, but in the end, he gave me back the one thing I had allowed him to steal, myself. And as I learned, I am anything but simple.